Hello, my name is Jack Cooke. Today I'm going to teach you how to restring a guitar. So this is an electric guitar, and I typically use the Ernie Ball power slinks. It's good for finger picking and power chords, so they'll last a long time and it sounds really good. It's got a very bright sound. So typically on a guitar you have the E, A, D, G, B, and E string. And so pretty much when restringing a guitar, you want to look at the diameter of the string and pretty much go from there. So if you can't remember the names of the guitars, just think of it from the top string in terms of decreasing thickness. So the one we're going to start with first is going to be the 48, and we're going to go from there. So the first thing when you're restringing a guitar that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to loosen the guitar strings. If you don't do this, then when you go to snip the strings, oftentimes they can rebound and you can cut your face, put an eye out. Overall, just not good. So you want to start by tuning the strings like if you were going to tune them down. And you want to do this with all 6 strings. It'll make cutting them easier and also make it safer for yourself. So typically what you're going to want to do next is you can take a pair of wire cutters or a more durable pair of scissors, and you're just going to want to snip the strings after you've loosened them relatively close to your pickups. And given it may take you a couple of tries, but you usually try to keep a hand on the strings to avoid any sort of elastic rebound. So I usually go with 1 string at a time. Sort of makes the process a little easier and helps you keep track of what you've already restrung and what you haven't. So the most technical part of the de-stringing is just taking the string off the top. Once you got that done though, you can just place it in a convenient, you can just put the string in a convenient place. I usually go for on the table. And you can go into your string pack and go ahead and select the string that matches the diameter of the one that you've just unstrung. So I just unstrung the E string, and so we are going to go with the thickest diameter of string, which is going to be our 48E. So typically after you unstring a few, it's usually a good idea to clean your headstock. A lot of times dust will build up around it just because you don't typically touch the inside of the headstock. So I usually get an old sock or an old cloth and just gently kind of go in between the tuning pegs and just sort of give it a very brief cleanup. Makes the guitar look much nicer and generally is just good for keeping dust out of the mechanics of your guitar. So you're going to want to do that around the headstock, which is this piece right here where your tuning pegs are located. Usually give the neck just a brief run over, and typically around your pickups, just because you don't usually make contact with them very often. So in between your pickups, on top of them yourselves, it just helps with the overall sound of your guitar and just keeping dust out of the mechanics. So in order to start restringing your guitar, what you're going to do is just take the selected string, so this is once again a 48mm E string, and you're going to run it through the appropriate slot on your guitar. Now this will vary from guitar to guitar, but typically it's pretty straightforward. So you'll then run it up the guitar and you'll adjust your tuning peg to the position that you want it in. I typically prefer to wrap my string around the back side of my tuning peg and then back through the farthest hole. I just usually find that this keeps the string a bit more taut, and as you wrap, it'll wrap the string around a little bit better and also just makes it look a bit nicer. Now, typically, when tuning a guitar, you want to tune upwards. It just makes it easier to keep track of in which direction when you're retuning your guitar and changing pitch where you're going. And once again, when you're tuning a guitar, I typically avoid putting it into standard tuning or drop D or anything like that until after I've got all strings on. So when putting strings back on your guitar, just get it to an appropriate enough tautness that the string just isn't sliding over the neck. So when switching over to the other side of the headstock, it's important that you tune your tuning pegs in the same direction. So as on this side we've gone up in order to tighten the strings, you're going to want to make sure you do the same on this side. So on the opposite side of the headstock, you too are going to want to go up in the same direction in order to tighten your strings. So once again, you're just going to get your tuning peg where the holes are facing horizontally, and you're just going to go around the back side. It's really important as you start going down in your string sizes to watch out for the end of your string, because it can stab you in the finger and it will hurt. Should it happen, it's no big deal. Just make sure to run it under some hot water when you're done, and just make sure to wash your hands as normal. You don't really risk any sort of severe infection. Okay, so once you've got all your new strings on, this is typically when you can do it as you go, but I usually save it for the end. This is where you go and you snip the excess string. So when snipping the excess string, it's very important that you go about as close to the peg as possible. Now you want to make sure you don't snip any of your other strings, but at this point just try to make it so you can snip just enough to where you have barely a little hanging off. And you're going to do this for all 6 strings. So after snipping the excess strings, now is typically when you would tune your guitar. What I usually do before tuning is just kind of stretch out the strings a little bit by putting a hand on the neck and then just kind of running your fingers up and down the neck just to make sure you go ahead and sort of stretch them out a little bit, because within the first few days that you have them on, they will stretch out naturally. Typically now you would go about tuning the guitar, and I usually play in standard or drop D, and if you're so musically inclined you can tune by ear. Otherwise, what you can do is you can get several apps available on the iTunes, as well as a standard guitar tuner. I usually use the Guitar Tuner app, available on the iTunes App Store, and it's usually a pretty decent app. Typically with electrics you want to make sure that it's plugged into an amp before going about tuning. With acoustics it'll pretty much work right off the bat. But yeah, you just choose the pitch in which you wish to play, and then tune your guitar accordingly. So that is how you restring and tune a guitar, and I hope this helps you.